Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my FXmovies.20 channel? Thank you so much. I never imagined my life would take such a turn. Looking back, I wonder how everything changed so subtly, so quietly, without me even realizing it. I had everything. A loving husband, a beautiful home, and a comfortable life. And yet, something was missing, something I couldn't quite put into words. My name is Emily, and this is my story. My husband, Daniel, is a businessman. He has always been hardworking, always pushing himself to achieve more. I admired that about him, and I still do. But over time, his work consumed him. He spent long hours at the office, traveled frequently, and even when he was home, his mind was elsewhere. Conversations became shorter, dinners became quieter, and soon silence became the language of our marriage. I told myself it was normal. I told myself that every marriage goes through phases, and that it was just a matter of time before things got better. But days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Before I knew it, I felt like a stranger in my own home, living with a man who had once been my best friend, but now felt like a distant acquaintance. It wasn't that Daniel didn't love me. I knew he did in his own way. He provided for me, made sure I had everything I needed, and never forgot birthdays or anniversaries. But there was something missing, something I couldn't ignore. The warmth, the connection, the feeling of being truly seen and heard. I longed for a conversation that wasn't interrupted by a phone call, for a night where we could just sit and talk like we used to. I really did. I planned dinners, suggested vacations, and even brought up my feelings gently, hoping he would understand. But his answer was always the same. Things will calm down soon, Emily. Just a little longer, a little longer. That phrase became a permanent fixture in our marriage, a promise that never seemed to materialize. And then there was Jason. Jason had been working for our family for nearly 2 years. He was our driver, but more than that, he was someone who noticed things. He noticed when I was upset, when I was quiet, when I was lost in thought. He wasn't intrusive, but he had a way of making me feel like I wasn't invisible. It started with small things. A simple "Good morning, Mrs. Carter," with a smile that felt genuine. A polite conversation during the drives. Nothing more than friendly talk about the weather, the city, or the latest news. But over time, those small conversations became the moments I looked forward to in my day. One afternoon, after Daniel had left for yet another business trip, I found myself in the back seat of the car, staring out the window, lost in my thoughts. Jason glanced at me through the rearview mirror and hesitated before speaking. "Everything okay, ma'am?" It was such a simple question, but something about the way he asked it made me pause. It wasn't just politeness, it was concern, real concern. I almost brushed it off the way I always did, but for some reason that day I didn't. "I'm fine," I said at first, I sighed. "Actually, I don't know." Jason didn't press me for details. He just nodded as if letting me know it was okay to feel that way. For the first time in a long time, I felt like someone was listening. It wasn't an instant connection or a dramatic moment. It was just easy. A simple exchange that reminded me what it felt like to be noticed, to be heard. And that was how it all began. The days that followed felt different, though I couldn't quite explain why. Nothing in my life had changed. Dan was still as busy as ever, and I was still going through the same routines. But something inside me had shifted. It was subtle, quiet, yet undeniable. I found myself looking forward to my daily rides. Those brief moments of casual conversation that broke the silence of my day. Jason never crossed any boundaries, never said anything inappropriate, yet there was a warmth in the way he spoke to me. He had a way of making me feel like a person again instead of just a wife left waiting. First, I told myself it was nothing. After all, what harm was there in talking to someone? I wasn't doing anything wrong. I wasn't betraying Daniel. But as time went on, I realized just how much I looked forward to those conversations, how much I valued having someone to talk to. Someone who actually listened. One evening, Daniel called to let me know his trip had been extended again. Just a few more days. "Emily," he said, "I promise I'll make it up to you." I had lost count of how many times he'd said that. I wasn't even upset anymore, I was just tired. I hung up the phone and sighed, rubbing my temples. The house felt empty, too big for just me. I had grown used to the loneliness, but that didn't mean I liked it. I had spent years making excuses for Daniel, telling myself that this was what marriage looked like. But was it really? Was it supposed to feel this isolating? That night, instead of going to bed, I stepped outside onto the front steps. The air was cool, and the sky was scattered with stars. I sat there hugging my knees to my chest, feeling the weight of the silence around me. I didn't even hear the footsteps behind me until Jason spoke. Long day. I looked up startled. He usually left right after dropping me off. I hadn't expected him to still be here. I nodded. Something like that. He hesitated for a moment before sitting down a few feet away, keeping a respectful distance. Anything I can do? I let out a small, tired laugh. Not unless you can make my husband come home. Jason didn't say anything right away. He simply looked out at the sky as if he was considering my words carefully. Then after a moment he said, "You must miss him a lot." I turned to look at him, then really look at him. There was no judgment in his eyes, no pity, just quiet understanding. "I do," I admitted. "Or at least I think I do. It's hard to miss someone who's never really there." The words slipped out before I could stop them, and for a moment I felt embarrassed. But Jason just nodded as if he understood. I meant we sat there in silence for a long time. It wasn't uncomfortable or awkward. If anything, it was peaceful. I couldn't remember the last time I had just sat with someone like this without feeling the pressure to fill the silence with meaningless words. Eventually, I sighed and stood up. "I should go inside," I said. Jason nodded and stood as well. "Good night, Mrs. Carter." I hesitated for a brief moment. "You can call me Emily." He gave me a small smile. "Good night, Emily." As I walked inside, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't regret. It was something else entirely, something I wasn't ready to name. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The house was silent, just as it always was. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat by the window, watching as the world outside slowly came to life. The neighbors' kids were riding their bikes, an older couple was walking their dog, and for a brief moment, I felt like an observer in my own life. I glanced at my phone. No messages from Daniel, no missed calls. I wasn't surprised. Later that day, Jason arrived to drive me to an appointment I had scheduled weeks ago. As I stepped into the car, he greeted me with his usual polite smile. "Good morning, Emily." I wasn't sure why, but hearing my name instead of the usual Mrs. Carter made me smile. "Nice morning, Jason." As we drove, the usual chatter filled the space. At one point, he glanced at me and smiled. "You seem different today." I raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" He shrugged. "Less tired, more like yourself." I wasn't sure how to respond to that. Was I more like myself? And if so, what did that even mean? I decided to change the subject. "Tell me something about you," I said. Jason looked surprised. I nodded. "I feel like you know a lot about me, but I don't really know much about you." He seemed to think about it for a moment before answering. "There's not much to tell, really. I grew up in a small town, moved here a few years ago. I've been driving for a while, but I've done other things too." "Like what?" He smiled slightly. "A little bit of everything. I worked in construction for a while, did some mechanic work. Driving just worked out." I tilted my head. "Do you like it?" He paused. "Some days, yeah. I like meeting people, I like driving, but sometimes I wonder if I should be doing something else." I nodded, understanding that feeling all too well. "I get that." We pulled up to my appointment, and as I stepped out of the car, I hesitated. "Thanks for the ride, Jason." He smiled. "Anytime, Emily." As I walked inside, I realized something strange. I was actually looking forward to the drive home. Over the next few weeks, our conversations became a regular part of my day. They weren't anything dramatic or life-changing, but they were easy, comfortable. It felt nice to have someone to talk to. Someone who wasn't rushing me off the phone or distracted by work. One afternoon, as we were driving back from the store, I turned to Jason and said, "Can I ask you something?" He glanced. "And me in the mirror, of course. Why do you still work for us?" I asked. "You could probably find something better, something that pays more." He was quiet for a moment before answering. "I guess I stay because I like the people I work for." His words caught me off guard. I looked at him, searching for any sign that he was just saying it to be polite, but his face was sincere. I smiled. "Well, I'm glad you stayed." For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then softly he said, "Me too." I felt my heart skip a beat. I told myself it was nothing, just words, just kindness, but deep down I knew something had changed. I kept telling myself that nothing was happening, that Jason was just being kind, that I was just grateful for his presence in my life, that I was just lonely and our conversations were harmless. But deep down I knew better. Something had shifted. I could feel it in the way I lingered in the car for just a few seconds longer after we arrived home, in the way I found myself looking forward to our conversations more than I should have, in the way his words stayed with me even long after he was gone. And yet I didn't stop. It wasn't that I wanted to cross a line. I never intended for things to go too far. But at the same time, I couldn't deny how much I needed those moments of warmth, of connection, of feeling like someone actually saw me. One evening, I received another call from Daniel. "I have to stay another week, Emily," he said. His voice was rushed, distracted, as if he was already thinking about something else. "I know I promised I'd be home by now, but things are hectic. You understand, don't you?" I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. "Yeah," I said quietly, "I understand." "Thank you," he said, relieved. "I'll make it up to you, I promise." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Okay, but the truth was I wasn't sure I believed him anymore. That night, I sat on the back patio staring up at the sky. I didn't even hear the door open behind me until Jason spoke. "Mind if I sit?" I looked up at him, surprised, but I nodded. "Go ahead." He sat down beside me, leaving space between us. For a while, neither of us said anything. The night was quiet, peaceful. Then finally, Jason broke the silence. "You okay?" I let out a small laugh. "You ask me that a lot." "Does I mean it?" he said simply. I turned to look at him, searching his face for something. Anything that would explain why he cared so much. Why he always seemed to notice when I was struggling. "I don't know," I admitted. "I feel like I've been waiting for my husband to come home for so long that I don't even know what it would feel like anymore." Jason was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You deserve more than waiting." His words hit me harder than I expected. I turned away, staring at the ground, trying to ignore the lump forming in my throat. "I don't know what I deserve anymore," I whispered. Jason didn't respond right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer. "You deserve to be happy." I closed my eyes, taking a shaky breath. Breath happiness. Isn't that simple? "Maybe not," Jason said, "but it shouldn't feel impossible either." I turned to him then, and for a moment we just looked at each other. I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe reassurance, maybe comfort, maybe just a reason to believe his words. But before I could say anything, I heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. My heart stopped. I stood up quickly, my hands shaking as I stepped toward the door. Jason stood too, his face unreadable. The front door opened and there he was, Daniel. He looked tired, his suit slightly wrinkled, his expression neutral as he set his briefcase down. When he looked up and saw me standing there, his brow furrowed. "Emily." I nodded, still trying to process the fact that he was actually here. "You're home early," he sighed. "Yeah, things wrapped up sooner than expected." He glanced past me, and for a split second I saw his eyes flicker to Jason. His expression remained unreadable, but something about his posture shifted. Jason cleared his throat. "I should go." He turned to me, his eyes meeting mine for the briefest of moments, and then he walked toward his car without another word. I watched him leave, my heart pounding. Daniel stepped closer. "Everything okay?" I forced myself to nod. "Yeah, everything's fine." He studied me for a moment, but then he just sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm exhausted," he muttered. "I think I'm just going to shower and head to bed." I nodded. "Okay." As he disappeared upstairs, I stood in the middle of the living room, feeling completely and utterly lost. Jason's words echoed in my mind. "You deserve to be happy." For the first time in a long time, I asked myself a question I had been avoiding: was I? And in that moment I knew the answer: I wasn't, and I couldn't keep pretending that I was.